Today is Thursday, October 3rd, 2019. Roland Martin here, broadcasting live from MGM National Harbor in National Harbor, Maryland, site of the Leaders and Legends Award ceremony with the Capital National Minority Supplier Development Council. We got a packed show today. First of all, from here, I'll be talking with the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. I'll be asking him about the HBCUs and that funding settlement. Also, Marilyn Mosby, of course, State's Attorney in Baltimore. She is one of the honorees here as well, and so we'll chat with her. But on today's show, Donald Trump asked China to investigate the Bidens. This man does not care about the Constitution. We'll break that thing down. Also, lots of conversation about the judge yesterday who hugged Amber Guyger. Now we are hearing that she actually led Amber Guyger to Christ. Was that something that she should have done? I can't wait to talk about it with our panel. Also, folks, domestic terrorist Christopher Hassan pleaded guilty to gun charges. We'll give you all the details, folks. We got a packed show. Can't wait to have this conversation. We're live here from MGM National. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time. And it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, folks, Roland Martin here, broadcasting from the Leaders and Legends Awards with the National Minority Supplier Development Council, the, of course, D.C. region here. We'll be chatting with the leader of that as well as some other guests from here. But first, let's talk about what's happening in the nation's capital. Donald Trump continues to ask foreign governments for their assistance to investigate a campaign rival. Today, he publicly called on China to investigate Joe Biden and his son Hunter. What in the hell is this guy doing? House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff said this is shameful conduct by Donald Trump.
Once again, have the President of the United States suggesting, urging a foreign country to interfere in our presidential elections is an illustration that this president, who's learned anything from the 2 years of the Mueller investigation, it's that he feels he can do anything with impunity. President of the United States encouraging a foreign nation to interfere again to help his campaign by investigating a rival is a fundamental breach of the president's oath of office. It endangers our elections, it endangers our national security. It ought to be condemned by every member of this body, Democrats and Republicans alike. What do you
Keep in mind, this all started when Donald Trump had a phone call with the president of Ukraine, asked them for their assistance to also investigate Joe Biden. Let's talk about this with our panel there in D.C. Dr. Greg Carr, Chair, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University, R.C. Maxwell, Republican strategist, and also Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA. R.C., got to start with you. If a Democrat had asked a foreign government to investigate a Republican campaign rival, there is no way in hell conservative radio, Fox News, the RNC would find that to be perfectly fine. What is wrong with your guy Donald Trump in asking foreign governments to investigate political rivals?
Shoulder shrug. I mean, I know that the goal here is for Democrats to sound the alarm and act like this isn't normal and everything's going to flames. However, Donald Trump has said since last year, hey, I really think Ukraine should take a look into the corruption that I've heard about, Biden. I really think China should take a look into XYZ. So he's been calling for this publicly for a long time. The Democrats are acting like this is an important...
where's...
Let me finish.
There is
I'm almost
no
done.
proof.
I'm almost done. The Democrats are acting like impeachment now is a big issue because right before we were talking about this, we were talking about reparations and Epstein. So what you see is Democrats wanting to pivot away and weaponize outrage once again and act like impeachment is something that the Americans want to see.
Reparations in Epstein? No. This is Donald Trump asking foreign governments to investigate a political rival. Are you saying you're perfectly fine with that?
I'm perfectly fine. I want my president pressuring foreign governments to divulge information about corruption that they know, whether the corruption is a Democrat or a Republican. So yes. Do you not want your president pressuring foreign governments and asking for them to divulge information about corruption? Do you know our government?
That's very interesting, Greg Carr. Greg Carr, that's very interesting because it was Joe Biden when he was vice president who called on Ukraine, Greg, to fire the prosecutor because the United States and all of the Western governments, the IMF and others felt that that prosecutor was not prosecuting corruption. So now all of a sudden, Republicans, so this is what I'm trying to understand, Greg. You hear RC say, oh, I want my president doing this, yet they are criticizing Biden because that's what he did, which was also not just him, but all of the West who were saying this guy was not investigating corruption.
Yeah, well, Roland, I don't necessarily have a dog in this fight. I think it's very amusing, really. But what I really think is this is why all public schools and private schools should have basic civics in their curriculum, beginning in elementary school. You take a presidential oath of office, and senators and congresspeople take an oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And Donald Trump is doing, I think this is one area where he's not crazy.
Hold on, Greg, don't leave the last half off. Against all enemies,
foreign or domestic.
Foreign or domestic.
Go ahead. Right. Well, no, you're right, Roland, and that's why I say I don't think Trump is being, in this particular instance, that he's being crazy. He's playing the only card he has, and he's relying on the partisanship in the current political climate we have for the Republican Party to basically show that they don't give a damn about any piece of paper, U.S. Constitution or any federal law. Donald Trump realizes that he has committed an offense, a breach of his oath of office, and that by any playbook, this is like a mathematical equation. I don't care what your political party is, this would constitute a high crime and misdemeanor. So his only play is to try to normalize it by getting on television now and go extremely absurd, calling every country to investigate domestic issues in the United States. Now, I say all that to say this. When I said I don't have a dog in this fight, what I'm saying is what's being tested now isn't a D or an R. It's the basic notion of separation of powers. It's the basic idea that there is a constitutional form of government in this society that's bigger than any political party. And what we see right now is a structural failure. Now, the question becomes what happens in the wake of that structural failure. And it's very interesting now because if the shoe were on the other foot, I expect that both sides will be calling for an impeachment, but I can't say that for sure. The only other thing I would say is the only side that's been tested in this regard is the Republican Party, because when it was Richard Nixon, the Republicans came around to support impeachment. When it was Bill Clinton, you had some Democrats that said he should be impeached. But in this case, they've been lockstep, and I think they're probably going to march the U.S. Constitution right off the cliff that it's probably been teetering on for the last 200 years.
Mustafa, what is quite interesting, again, is to look at the so-called party of law and order, say it's perfectly fine what Donald Trump is doing. And then what we had is they were hiding the actual full transcript. What was released wasn't the actual transcript. That was a partial understanding of the transcript. But to Greg's point, right, he wants to normalize this. He wants to say, oh, no, it's perfectly fine because this guy has no problem with foreign interference in a U.S. election to help him.
Well, I think the president actually needs foreign assistance to be able to feel that he can be competitive. I mean, if you're going to be real about it, and all due respect to the other panelists, but I didn't hear the president asking, Russia to go out and look in a different way than they did. And then the founders were very clear about this in the sense of making sure that there were not a foreign government interfering in our elections, and that's exactly what this is about. And unfortunately, what we are moving toward is an autocratic system of government. I've heard people use the word dictatorship. And the president wants to have full power. He does not want to have checks and balances, which every other president has followed since the founding of our country, because he knows that if there were truly checks and balances, and what we really have to do, as the professor said, is that as we're moving forward, folks are going to have to strengthen this process so that when folks are doing these types of egregious behaviors, that there's actually repercussions for these types of things.
So what's interesting to me, RC, again, so you don't care. So you don't care if Donald Trump asks Ukraine or China or Putin or Russia to investigate rivals, when in fact there's absolutely zero evidence. There is zero evidence of corruption of Hunter Biden or Joe Biden.
I think that's a separate discussion, but I think that there is obvious evidence of corruption.
No, that is the discussion.
Yeah. So
that's the discussion.
Okay, well, Joe Biden literally pegged money, federal dollars, to whether or not Ukraine would fire a prosecutor who was investigating a company his son was working for.
He wasn't investigating. That's the
He
whole
wasn't
point.
investigating. RC, that is a lie. RC,
That's
the
okay,
investigation,
Roland.
that is a lie. No, it's a lie. It has been reported and proven. That is a lie.
So you're
You
telling
are
me-
promoting a lie.
I am. So you're telling me the clip where Joe Biden literally describes exactly what I just talked about on camera, you're telling me that's what? Is that a lie as well?
No. What
Is
Joe
that a lie as well?
what Joe Biden did was, what Joe Biden did as vice president, along with the International Monetary Fund and numerous other Western governments, they said this Ukrainian prosecutor was refusing
The same
to actually
IMF that got
investigate
busted for corruption
which
time
is
and time
why
again?
they want.
The same IMF that's known for
Which is why
being
they
one of
wanted
the most
this guy
corrupt
out.
international entities. The
Oh,
IMF is
now
is,
the IMF. Now
Yeah,
the IMF is
Roland,
corrupt.
I know that you're a
See,
super.
now
I know that you're a super Democrat and you're like a Democrat Party mascot.
No. Actually,
but you can admit that the Biden's engaged
actually,
in illegal
RC, you're
activity.
alive. Actually, RC, see, this is the game you play. First of all, RC, I'm not a super Democrat. That's first.
Really?
Two, I'm not a Republican.
Weren't you on the
I'm a black
campaign
man.
trail for
Now,
Hillary
here's
Clinton?
the piece.
No, don't go down the wrong road.
No, actually, that's a lie.
Don't go down
That's
the
a lie.
wormhole, brother.
So
Keep
here's
it right
the
on the
piece.
thing.
No, RC, I operate by a set of facts. There are no facts, none, zero, zilch, that show that there was corruption, Joe Biden or his son Hunter. I'm asking you again, are you perfectly fine, RC? Are you perfectly fine with Donald Trump asking China, asking who were embroiled in a tariff war, asking Ukraine, using his authority as the president to ask foreign governments to investigate political rivals? You're cool with that?
No, I care very much about this entire situation. Specifically, I care about the fact that the CIA whistleblower is working directly with Adam Schiff, who has no credibility at all, and who shouldn't be leading this impeachment inquiry to begin with.
Pivot.
CIA is working with Adam Schiff. Like, you think that's gonna get, if the Democrat Party think that's what's gonna get voters off of their ass to back a CIA whistleblower and Adam Schiff on an investigation that we know is a sham, I mean, you're lying to yourself. This entire investigation is self-referential, and there's nothing illegal that's happened.
Greg, here's what I find to be what is so cute about the conservative lying machine. The whistleblower goes to the committee. The committee makes it perfectly clear. This is the process by which you must go through, the established process. You have an inspector general who said the whistleblower properly followed the process. Now Republicans want to try to switch it and say, oh, he was somehow colluding with Adam Schiff, but RC also never bothered to answer my question. And Greg, that's really what we have here. What you have here is the conservative machine and Donald Trump. They want to throw so much stuff out here to confuse people to go, oh, it must be something else, as opposed to dealing with the most basic fundamental thing that happened here. That's the game they're playing.
Yeah, I think these words, these labels have become virtually meaningless. Conservative, I mean, Republican equals conservative. Well, it depends on what you mean by conservative. If we're talking about busting the budget to pay for the military, that's not conservative politics. That's certainly not a conservatism that would have been recognized. We're talking about a form of race nationalism and nativism that, frankly, it's quite disappointing to hear anyone non-white try to make this thing stand up and run it up the flagpole to salute. But I will say this about the contemporary issue. It's very clear that the Russians interfered in the previous American election. It's also very clear that Donald Trump, as he told the ambassadorial contingent that was in the White House, we, meaning the United States government, interfere with other people's elections. So this isn't anything new, but this is what I would do if I was Xi Jinping, who just celebrated the 70th anniversary of the Communist Party in China. If I'm Xi Jinping, it's very simple. I simply say this: hey man, Don, since you asked for this, I'm gonna look into some things. This is what I'm gonna need for you. I'm gonna need you to knock those tariffs all down a little bit. And the minute that Donald Trump does that, because all he has done in all of his actions, whether it be this one or everything preceding it, has been to do things to enrich himself and to protect himself politically. The minute those tariffs come down, when the Chinese say they'll investigate, well, then you see, we'll see whether these quote-unquote conservatives or Republicans or whatever you want to call them would defend that. And if they do, then I think it's very, very clear that they're putting everything ahead of anything called the United States of America, and we can drop all pretenses and finally get about the business of political transformation in this country.
Mustafa, at the end of the day, what we're looking at here is a party that will defend anything that Donald Trump does, because frankly, they're weak and scared. They're scared that he is going to come after them, and to literally watch individuals defend asking a foreign power for help is utterly hilarious, when these were the same people who accused Hillary Clinton, and it was a lie, of selling uranium to foreign entities. That's how crazy the politics are today.
The house is on fire. And, you know, when you look at folks like Lindsey Graham, who you would never have assumed would take some of the positions that he has, when you look at someone like A.G. Barr, and a number of these other folks who are now being pulled into this investigation, it just goes to show you that, unfortunately, the president cares about himself. He's willing to throw anybody under the bus who will, you know, take some of the attention away from what's going on. And the president knows that he was wrong. That's why the impeachment inquiry is so important, to go through the facts, to go through a process, and then folks can vote and make a decision. And the other part of this is that the president also knows that he's had a set of failed policies, and we can debate any of the policies if folks really want to get down to it and unpack them. There are farmers who are losing their farms. There are folks who are dealing with the floods that are happening. There are manufacturing jobs that are disappearing because there was not a well-thought-out set of policies that got everybody around the table and worked the process. So the president knows that his only chance is confusion and chaos, and hopefully he'll be able to squeak through in the next election if he can make it through the impeachment inquiry, and then if there are a full impeachment process that goes forward.
All right, folks, got to go to a break right now. When we come back, I want to talk about a poll that came out earlier this week that shows that Donald Trump has 2% support among black folks, folks like RC. We'll also talk to Dr. Cordell Brooks, former president of the NAACP. Lots of conversation about this forgiveness given towards Amber Guyger. There was the judge who, of course, hugged her. Now we hear that she supposedly led him to Christ. Others say Botham Jean's brother should not have extended, should not have hugged her in the courtroom as well. We'll talk about all of that next. Roland Martin Unfiltered, broadcasting live from MGM National Harbor, site of the Leaders and Legends Awards Gala. Back in a moment. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. All right, folks, you've heard me talk a lot about marijuanastock.org because I want to keep you informed of investment opportunities that make sense. And we've all watched the growth of the cannabis industry. A recent report by New Frontier Data estimates the global cannabis market at more than $340 billion. We know that marijuana legalization is sweeping the country state by state. We also know that marijuana has a good cousin, the hemp plant, with a much higher concentration of CBD. That means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Until recently, hemp farming was practically illegal in the U.S. and heavily regulated by the DEA. However, the 2018 Farm Bill changed all of that, making it legal to grow hemp CBD in the U.S., creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. They need land to grow all the plants, and that's where our good friends at 420 Real Estate come in. Their business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. That's right, there are hemp CBD landlords. And you can get in on the action. Now, what they've done, 420 Real Estate has done is offer this special deal for the folks who watch Roland Martin Unfiltered. Originally, the minimum investment level was $500. Now you can invest in this crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200 up to $10,000. Again, this is a $340 billion industry that is still growing. You can participate with as little as $200. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. Get in the game and get in the game now. All right, folks, social media has been on fire talking about, of course, yesterday's decision by jury to give 10 years to Amber Guyger, but that's not really what folks have been focused on. That is a couple of things that took place where the judge in that case came off the stand, embraced Amber Guyger, and handed her her Bible. Stories today say that judge led Amber Guyger to Christ. Others have been talking about the brother of Botham Jean coming off the stand and also embracing her as well. But so I want to bring in Dr. Cornell Brooks, former president of the NAACP, ordained minister. He actually had a tweet about that. Let me go ahead and pull that tweet up, folks. I want to show that tweet where he talked about what we saw. And again, a lot of people have been focused on this and talking about what this means. And so I want you to pull the graphic up. Dr. Brooks, explain that. You say, I have preached forgiveness for 25 years, but using the willingness of black people to forgive as an excuse to further victimize black people is sinful. America should ask black people forgiveness for serially asking African Americans to forgive sanctioned police brutality. Now, now we hear that the judge also did it and extended Jesus Christ tour. So just your thoughts about that as well. Do you still believe that should not have happened in the courtroom?
Well, first of all, let me say it's good to be with you. And I just want to be clear here. It's one thing to commend Botham Jean's brother for the magnanimity of his spirit, the generosity of his spirit, his willingness to forgive in the context of deep pain. That being said, it is wrong to praise his forgiveness, willingness to forgive, and use that as an excuse to serially ask black people to forgive again and again and again without taking any responsibility for preventing families from going through what the Jean family went through. In other words, black people are demanded to extend forgiveness to people perpetuating crimes against them. And frankly, it's just unconscionable. This happens again and again and again. That is to say, the country praises the victims, extending forgiveness to the perpetrators of a crime, and we decline to do anything about preventing the further victimization of black people.
You know, we talked about this on yesterday, and again, it's been very interesting how raw this conversation has been among black folks. And I think you're right. I think black folks are sitting here. I think black people are not necessarily mad at Botham Jean, although many say the judge, what she did was improper. But it's this whole embracing of, oh my God, look at that. Look how and like I said, there was a conservative talk show host in Texas, Mark Davis, who was like, oh, that's forgiveness as opposed to racial revenge. It was as if, you know, that if you don't forgive, the only reason you wanted Amber Guyger to go to jail is because of racial revenge.
That's right. Let's be clear about this. What we have in this country is people literally participating collectively in an individual act of forgiveness, but they're not collectively participating in an act of redemption, right? So in other words, we commend Botham Jean's brother for this individual act of forgiveness, but when it comes to redemption and restoration as a country, we're not calling for consent decrees to hold police departments accountable. We're not calling for more police officers to be charged, indicted, tried, convicted, and punished. The same people commending Botham Jean's family have done nothing, have been stricken with a case of moral laryngitis, in terms of calling for the police reforms that would prevent these kinds of tragedies from happening again and again and again. So, of course, the emotions in our community are raw, and rightly so. This is an absolute outrage, because why should black folks be called upon serially to extend forgiveness without anyone questioning whether, I should say, why it is we who are being called upon to forgive, as opposed to others being called upon to be responsible?
RC, your thoughts on what Dr. Brooks just said?
I agree in a lot of ways with what he had to say. The only thing that's kind of unfortunate is that we're still kind of doing this analysis, you know, black people think this, black people think that. Based upon my own sample size of social amplification, I've seen a wide variety and a diverse amount of opinions and kind of reactions to the situation. So I think everyone has a different opinion. I don't think this is necessarily cause for us to sit and overanalyze, especially when, you know, there are things, I don't know. I really just hope black families aren't sitting at home and overanalyzing this when, you know, black families aren't, you know, owning homes and black wealth isn't doing what it should be doing. You know, I just feel like sometimes we overanalyze situations like this.
Well, actually, I think that I'll say this here. My social media platform is a hell of a lot bigger than yours. And so if we look at, I got 2.5 million followers, and I can tell you there's been a whole host of reaction to this.
Yeah.
Folks have been talking about it. And Greg, black people can do multiple things at one time. We can analyze this and also care about home ownership. Greg, you put a tweet out that people really cracked up about this very issue. And so I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Well, brother, I mean, Roland, it's funny, man. Yeah, we laughed at that. In fact, that's one of the benefits of teaching in a black space. And, you know, I made the decision to work in black spaces, like in black media. That's where we're having this conversation. First of all, white opinion, I have no use for any of it. At this point, they have nothing, and there's nothing to be said that I would really think about seriously, because this is racial. But within the black community this morning, you know, one of our students asked, you know, I was in class, and she said, why did he hug her? And the other young sister, who happens to be from Nigeria, parents from Nigeria, she's actually from Texas, she said, well, anybody knows that in order to get a good curse, you got to get close, because you got to get something off their person, off their body. And everybody cracked up. Now, this is a black conversation. Let's be clear. These are Haitians. First of all, you're talking about a teenager. Now, you know, I had a brother come in, a South African brother, a professor on our faculty, Brother Nyandu, this afternoon, and we continued to talk about this in this context. He said, first of all, when you have a family, you don't let the children speak in public like that. There should have been an elder. And if you listen to what Botham Jean said, you really got a better sense of how this kind of forgiveness thing operated within a larger context. That's number one.
Hold on, Greg. I want you to finish that thought.
Yes.
Because I want to read what she said. This is what she said. What Brant did today, Brant is Botham Jean's brother. What Brant did today was remarkable. It's one that we are taught to do. It's one that we must do. But I don't want the community. Hold on one second. I don't want the community to be mistaken by what happened in the courtroom. Forgiveness for us as Christians is a healing for us. But as my husband said, there are consequences. It does not mean that everything else we have suffered has to go unnoticed. We're leaving Dallas this week, but you all must live in Dallas, and you all must try to make Dallas a better place. What you saw and what you heard in the courtroom really showed what your system is, and you must seek to do something about it. You saw a contaminated crime scene. You saw deletion of evidence by persons in high office. You saw turning off of body cams and cameras in the vehicles. You saw investigations that were marred with corruption, and throughout the trial, what I kept saying to myself is, Botham was a child of God, and we know that he did not deserve what he got. The most hurtful part is for me that even after he was shot, he was left to die. That was Botham Jean's mother at a church last night in Dallas. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say very quickly, what Brother Brooks said is very true. We're talking about forgiveness, but we're also talking about justice. And so that's why I said white opinion has no place in this conversation as far as I'm concerned. What we have two things operating here. When you hear Sister Jean say, your system, I'm with her. Whether she was born in Haiti or not, I'm with her as an African. That's a very African thing to do. In other words, we're not going to hold on to this. What you saw in that hug as well was a transfer. This white woman killed a black man in cold blood. And guess what? She didn't get forgiven by that by that brother. The forgiveness can't come from him. That was an act of healing for himself and the family, and his mother interpreted that. For this white woman, she'll carry the burden of this, and now the thing has been transferred. That's why the young people are laughing in terms of a curse. A curse ain't no Hollywood thing. We're talking about a transfer of a moral, of an ethical, ultimately of a much larger principle of responsibility. The only other thing I would say is this. When we see Judge Kemp, Tammy Kemp, tell this young lady to, read John 3:16, and she's going to hug her. That is the other thing that's in play here, and I think that is, too, a black conversation. The effect of Christian slavery on Christianity. We're not talking about African Christianity. We're not talking about African black Christianity, the black church. We're talking about the slavery type of Christianity that can have whiteness never displaced as the center of attention. That judge, as far as I'm concerned, gestured toward a form of slavery Christianity that we've got to exercise from our being, because the Africans around the world who embrace Christianity on their own terms may look at the American Negro and say, no, this ain't what we talking about.
Mustafa, your thoughts?
My thought on it is, has the judge ever come down before and hugged any of the other folks who have been convicted of murder or of another serious crime? For me, I feel that the judge, if she felt it was necessary to help to lead this lady to Christ, she should have went to the jail and done that after the trial was over, and then she could have, lived out and done her missionary work. I'd be completely fine with that. The other part of this conversation that we need to also recognize is the fact that there still is not fairness in the justice system. There's not fairness in the sentencing system. We've had conversations on this show about folks getting significant time for being accused of voter fraud, people having these charges from marijuana being much more significant than 10 years. So, and the last point is that you have 3 African-American men who are on this stage right here today. And if any of us had murdered someone in their apartment and then didn't even try and help them through CPR, and then for just a little while covered it up, waiting on some other help to come, we all know that we would not have gotten 10 years, and we would have been lucky if we would have made it out of the apartment if the police came, and what may have happened on the way through the transport system, and of course we know what would have happened, unfortunately, in the courtroom.
Cornell, I got to ask you this here. As somebody who has been a longtime decision counselor at my church, Church Without Walls in Houston, Reverend Ralph Douglas West, I can tell you, when I heard the story that the judge led Amber Guyger to Christ, I mean, I can let you know that process takes a little bit longer than whispering a few things in their ear. And again, I'm just being very serious. And so where you literally have to ask that person a series of questions. Do you accept Jesus Christ? And then you take them through multiple scriptures. And so when I heard that that's what she did, I was kind of like, I don't know about, I mean, as a Christian, I understand leading folks to Christ. That process take a little bit longer than just saying a few words and handing them, say, read one scripture and here's a Bible. Your final thoughts?
Listen, I don't believe in nanosecond Twitter moment conversions. Conversions are a matter of seeking forgiveness and engaging in redemption. And that means making a commitment to turn one's life around. And so making a decision like that in a courtroom at the hands of a judge, I won't second guess it, I won't judge it, but I'm simply saying that conversion goes way beyond a courtroom moment of stress and anxiety at the point at which you're about to go away for 10 years as opposed to for life in terms of murder. And so I'm not going to question the judge's sincerity, but I'll simply say this. That's the kind of conversation that should have occurred in jail. It should not have occurred in a courtroom, and it's just not appropriate for a judge to do that kind of thing.
Or in a conference room, whatever, because you have to be mindful of those things. Dr. Cornell Brooks, I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
It's good to be with you.
All right, coming up next, Donald Trump is polling among 2% among black people. We've got one of them right here on the set. He can explain why. Coming up next, Roland Martin Unfiltered. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. That's my homeboy there, Gerald Albright, one of the folks performing at the Luxe Jazz Experience in Cabo, November 7th through 11th. I'm going to be there as well. Weekend-long event held at the Omnia Day Club in Los Cabos, nestled on the Sea of Cortez in Los Cabos, Mexico. Folks, it's going to be an amazing time over those 4 days. We're going to have lots of great food and drink and golf and spa, health and wellness, you name it. The second annual Luxe Jazz Experience. Of course, some great people, entertainers are going to be there. Comedian Mark Curry, Gerald Albright, Alex Bouillon, Raul Madon, Incognito, Pieces of a Dream, Kirk Whalum, Average White Band, Donnie McClurkin, Shalea, Roy Ayers, Tom Brown, Ronnie Laws, and Ernest Quarles. I'll be broadcasting Roland Martin Unfiltered for that Thursday and Friday there as well. And so we want you to be in the house. It's going to be a great time. Go to LifeLuxeJazz.com, LifeLuxeJazz.com for more information. Packages are going fast. You also want to book it soon so your airline tickets are not crazy high. So go to LifeLuxeJazz.com. All right, folks, welcome back to National Harbor, MGM. We're, of course, here for the Leaders and Legends Awards Gala. So I'm going to be talking with some folks here just a moment. But earlier this week, we talked about a new poll out showing that Donald Trump is polling 2% among black people. Remember, he thanked black folks for not voting in the last election. And so what does it mean? Can he actually get even higher than that? It was interesting seeing that poll, seeing those poll numbers. He's always touting black unemployment, always saying how much he's done for the blacks. But the question is, will black folks say yes to Donald Trump? RC, you and Candace Owens and a few of the black folks, y'all are having a black summit this week. MAGA supporters for backing Trump. Do you actually think Donald Trump has a shot at getting black votes?
I'll start out by saying that I'm very dismissive of this poll and how credible or legitimate it is. You saw from 2016 and even from 2018 that polling continues to be not a legitimate way to kind of analyze elections. Now, beyond that, I do think that the RNC needs to do a better job reaching out to the black community, because I think they have a message that should resonate in their community, which is, look, you guys want school choice. I'm sure you're not supporting these full-term abortions, and also the economy is doing well. And I think that's a message that will resonate with black families if they can get their butts to those neighborhoods to do black outreach.
But you're talking about the RNC, Greg, we hear RC talk about the RNC and black outreach. It ain't like Donald Trump has actually done black outreach. And again, you can talk about the unemployment rate. I got you. But we also know when that actually started to come down. What we also know is that, in fact, I'm here at the Capital Region of the National Minority Supplier Development Council, Greg. And in the last 2.5 years, Donald Trump has been trying to eliminate the National Minority Supplier Development Council from his budget.
Of course. Well, I mean, let's be fair to the President of the United States. He's an equal opportunity shifter and stiffer. I mean, as a businessman, he doesn't pay anybody. But that having been said, here's several things that we should just set aside and get rid of at the beginning. Number one is, we're not going to debate whether Donald Trump is a racist or not. All we have to do is, as they would say in the old commercial, roll that beautiful bean footage of all the things he said. So we can set that aside. When we look at him in terms of his policies, you're absolutely right. He doesn't just support minority business. He doesn't support business, period. This trade war with China, this foolishness with Wilbur Ross at the Department of Commerce, the way he's crushing. We heard Mustafa walk through what he's doing to the farmers. So we can kind of set that aside. But let's look very specifically, finally, at race and when it comes to black and brown people and policy. When Donald Trump has been running around these last few days, coming unglued and finally getting his strategy of throwing everything against the wall to see what it will stick with this whole notion of foreign interference, one of the things he said day before yesterday was, look at them, they're attacking us because look at our judges. Pause. You've been making this point over and over again. Any black person that would vote for Donald Trump at this point is probably beyond convincing, because they don't understand that it is the appointment, the replacement of the federal bench, that's the single most important thing that's going to impact black lives for the next 2 generations. So anybody black voting for Donald Trump now, when it comes back around and these district court judges and these courts of appeal judges and these Supreme Court judges tear this country apart with a theocratic view of the United States Constitution, those very same American Negroes are going to have nothing to say. You can put that down in black letter, brother. Nothing to say.
If I can.
There's no
Mustafa is
response.
very interested.
There's no response.
Hold on 1 second, RC. Hold on. RC, I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah, let him,
Mustafa
please,
get
let
in
him
this.
talk. I want to hear this.
But Mustafa, I got to ask you this here. When I look at the judges, nearly 90% of the judges that Donald Trump has appointed are white men.
Come on.
Very few African Americans. First, when you look at Department of Housing, Health and Human Services, HUD, and Department of Education, the rollback of civil rights protections. In the Department of Justice, Jeff Sessions, continued by Bill Barr, want to roll back consent decrees, increase the use of private federal prisons. And so we could go on. And so I'm just saying it's interesting. So if there are 2 things Donald Trump has done supposedly that's good for black folks, I can count about 8 or 10 things. That's a ledger doesn't look too great. Your thoughts on this poll and what RC had to say?
As I've shared before, this is a very apartheid system that has been put in place, and I don't use that in a very flippant way. I mean, you can literally look at the pieces that have been put in place. We'll stop there. Look at the positions that have been filled inside of the 17 agencies and departments that I work with in the past. You very rarely see a person of color in an influential position. Ben Carson has an influential position, but then we go a step further and we look at the rollbacks that have been happening around housing, around affordable housing. So we know that disproportionately a number of our people live in that space. And yes, we want to get folks into home ownership. That is an important part of the process. But there have been, unfortunately, moves in the negative direction in that space. If we look at medically underserved areas, we also have seen a rolling back. The president, when he pushes his budgets through, he's telling you exactly where he is placing his priorities. In civil rights, in the Department of Justice, a number of the programs that were there in the past to help people to not get caught up in this system, to help them to be able to move forward, unfortunately, have, fallen to the wayside. So I don't have to get into, some of the things that the president says, although they are egregious. Let's look at a person's works. Let's look at the policies that they're putting forward. Let's look at the budgets that you're putting forward and see if these folks are actually a priority. And as John Conyers used to say when I worked for him, you'll know everything you need to know based upon where people are putting their money.
RC, go ahead.
If I can just quickly rebut the fact that Donald Trump's policies has not been policies that favor African Americans, we can start with the Department of Justice, which you mentioned.
Yep.
President Trump was the one that passed the largest rewrite in Department of Justice history in order to pass criminal justice reform. That we know disproportionately helps the African American community. And just beyond
I'm sorry,
that,
you call it the largest what? Hold on 1 second. No. Hold on. I just want to clarify. You called it the largest what?
Rewrite of a criminal justice framework and a federal framework, and that's what Donald Trump's First Step Act was. Now, just getting beyond that,
the largest?
Yes.
Don't
Yes.
let them keep talking, bro.
It was.
Okay, go ahead.
A larger single substantial shift in federal criminal justice policy. You won't find one bigger than the First Step Act.
Okay, go ahead.
What about them judges, bro?
Going beyond that,
about them judges,
we're talking about housing programs like affordable housing. These are some of the worst housing that you can offer to a person. You might as well make someone homeless at this point. So what Donald Trump is doing is he's transitioning.
Whoa, hell no.
Let me continue.
RC.
He's transitioning
There's a
to
difference
opportunity
between
zones.
being homeless and a public housing. Are you crazy?
He's put billions of dollars into federal opportunity zones. So he's trying to come up with a dynamic framework to increase the quality of life of the individuals who are living in quote-unquote low-income areas. So you may say, so I know we think different ways. My thinking is any program that was a developmental program to help the black community that's existed for the past 10 years, I say cut it, because I say that's a program that has failed us, literally failed us. So I say cut all these terrible programs, implement something innovative, and that's what Donald Trump's doing. And that's the message that resonates.
I don't have any problem with what you're saying, RC. There's a brand new book out on Clarence Thomas It's a white law professor who is reading Clarence Thomas as a black nationalist. And that's something that black legal scholars have been saying for 20 years. Not a black nationalist in the sense that we think about black nationalism traditionally. This very rugged individualism, pro-Second Amendment, to the point where Clarence Thomas would argue in his opinions in many ways that the Second Amendment was the biggest gift that the Civil War amendments allowed black people to have. And so I get that. So I don't have really much a problem with that. My challenge is with the fact that these doctrinaire black conservatives don't seem to have enough of a command of American history to understand that nothing in this country's history is theoretical. In other words, what we're dealing with is a white nativist nationalist who doesn't even enact the policies that we just heard RC talking about. So if you're saying withdraw the subsidies from everyone, we can disagree or agree on that, but here's what Trump is not doing. Here's what Republicans are not doing. They are not withdrawing the subsidies for everyone. The subsidies for billionaires and the tax cut is enough evidence. But we can set all that aside for a second. Like Mustafa said, you can go through it, and you said you can go through chapter and verse all these policies. I got one question for RC and Candace Owens and anybody else. Defend the judges, brother.
Defend the judges?
Yeah, defend these judicial selections, including the stolen Supreme Court seat that Neil Gorsuch has, including the appointment of Brett Kavanaugh, who has credible sexual assault. No. Defend the judges, brother. Okay. Defend them. Defend them.
Fingers crossed, the way things are looking, President Trump should be able to put 2 more judges on the court, which will swing the court.
And then what?
Which will swing the court into a heavy conservative.
Right.
You guys have to look. All these major.
Who are you guys?
All these major. You guys, as in like you guys that are brainwashed by the black liberal establishment.
No, I said judges, brother. If you can't do it, just say. Look at the
I know you read a lot of Frank Wilderson, and you're probably a black pessimist, but there are people.
You see, this is a man arguing with himself on television.
There are people who are black optimists, and my thinking is that the history of civil rights expansions that African Americans have been able to reap the benefits of, they've been passed by conservative judges.
Wait a minute.
You guys are constructing this threat as if Brett Kavanaugh.
I'm not arguing with you, brother. I just need you to give me the example.
And this is what the Democrat Party has done successfully. They've put people in front of cameras who will lie straight face to the camera and tell black people, these conservatives are coming, they're going to take your rights, they're going to take your rights to vote, they're going to take your abortion.
This is a man arguing with himself. He hasn't given one example. Is this the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Is it the Voting Rights Act? Is it the Fair Housing Act of 1968 that these judges are going to eviscerate?
So you're telling me in 1965 when these judges...
No, I asked you a question.
1965
I asked you a question.
Were these conservatives? Were these...
I asked you a question, brother.
Or were these woke ivory tower?
No, are you saying...
So here,
you have to recognize that conservatives who are on the court have no reason to vote against or vote down anything that expands civil rights.
Here is what I know. Gentlemen, here's what I know.
The man arguing with himself.
Here is what I know. This is what I know, very simple. Numerous Republican judges appointed by Trump would not even affirm before the Senate committee that Brown versus Board of Education was appropriately decided.
Exactly.
That's what we know, RC.
Defend the
you
judge.
can deny it, but we have it on record. It's not true. RC, here's the deal.
They did not.
I'm just going to give you some advice, RC. RC, they would not answer the question.
It was not.
They would not answer here. They would not answer the question. It was specifically asked.
Oh, now
here is the fundamental deal.
With a JD
Okay, all right, y'all. Here's the piece.
Sorry,
that's all nonsense. We'll see what happens, but I'm still waiting to see Trump's so-called black plan because it don't exist. All right, y'all. I gotta go to a break right now. Thank all of y'all for being on the panel today. I'm gonna come back. We're gonna talk from the National Minority Supply Development Council here at National Harbor MGM. Back in a moment, Roland Martin Unfiltered. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. All right, folks, we are here at MGM Grand National Harbor at the gala here. Of course, Leaders and Legends, National Minority Supplier Development Council, the Capital Region. And so we are here for this awards. There are a number of people who are being honored. Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford of Maryland, also Marilyn Mosby, the state's attorney. She's one of the honorees as well. And so in a moment, we'll be talking with both of them. Right now, though, I want to chat with a woman who leads the NMSDC here. How you doing?
Okay, how are you?
I'm doing great. Let everybody know who you are.
Well, I'll tell them. Just in case, I'm Sharon Pender, President and CEO of the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council.
All right, so folks who don't know, what does the National Minority Supply Development Council do?
Okay, for the last 47 years, it's been the premier organization in the country that certifies minority businesses for the supply chain of corporate members in this country.
And so when we talk about that, I mean, what does that impact on African Americans?
Well, let's talk about why it was even created. Created on the heels of the civil unrest of the 60s, and it was the thought there was to make the private sector accountable for its minority spend. Because you hear about government contracts and some of that is done by regulations, et cetera, but it was a way of being able to penetrate corporate spend.
And so what we're looking at now is that y'all have been, frankly, fighting for your survival, though. Especially with this administration, folks trying to cut it out of the budget.
Yeah, particularly our council also has 2 MBDA centers. We have the only federally funded federal procurement center in the country. We also have the MBDA Center for Washington, D.C. And those funds were threatened. And we spend a lot of time on the Hill in terms of making the case for that.
And one of the things that people don't realize is that when we talk about being able to access these federal contracts, African Americans have been shut out for a long time in corporate America. And so when you look at black businesses, they have been able to, frankly, grow and thrive largely being able to access federal, state, county, and city contracts.
Absolutely. And quite frankly, if you look at the programs, it was built on the backs of blacks. And unfortunately, you know, I'm talking 47 years later, the issues are still the same, the problems are still the same, but now the pie is divided and double divided for other ethnic minorities.
And so, moving forward, I mean, what should our audience, what should they be talking about, what should they be focusing on, what help do you need from them when it comes to this particular issue,
you know,
and trying to make sure that Supply Development Council is still around?
And unfortunately, we're still having the conversation, and that's why it's still viable. But I think the difference is going to be the fact that the numbers are now switched. When we look across America and we look at the changing and the minority population becoming the majority, and you look at particularly African American women are the fastest growing segment in terms of entrepreneurship,
right?
Then you're going to have to do something about the numbers. And so often people don't pay attention until it impacts them. And so if it has that economic impact, because our businesses have to survive in order to be contributing to our economy, then we have to pay attention to begin to support those businesses now for the future.
All right, then. How can folks reach out to you if they, let's say, so first of all, are businesses a part of the council? Do they become members? How do they get involved?
The council, all across the country, I'm one of 23 across the country. We are individual 501c3s, and so the members are our corporate members. But in this market, you know, we have federal, state, and local government as well. And suppliers, which are minority businesses, are a part of it in terms of from that perspective, but it's primarily made up of those corporations.
All right. Well, actually, I'm going to be in Atlanta in a couple of weeks doing an event there.
I heard you were. I saw that.
Yep,
and so that's our national conference, and so we're looking forward to that as well.
All right. Well, we certainly appreciate it. And, of course, you have the Leaders and Legends Gala here. And, of course, there are a number of honorees here. Mm-hmm. And so why is it important to also represent them, showcase them to this audience?
We have the top 100 Minority Business Awards, the only one of its kind in this region, I can tell you. And the reason we do it is that when I started it 12 years ago, people would say to me, well, where are these businesses you're talking about that you advocate? We have such pride around the accomplishments of our businesses. And so they are no longer, you can no longer relegate them to mom and pop. We have very successful businesses with revenues ranging from less than $1 million to over $50 million. And so we celebrate them tonight.
All right. Well, look, we're looking forward to it. Glad to be here. I will appreciate it. I know I'm about to chat with, I think, Marilyn Mosby next, or the Lieutenant Governor. And so about to get this show started in a few minutes.
We look forward to seeing you in the theater.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Again, folks, Roland Martin here. We had MGM National where this is taking place. And so we're certainly glad to be here. And so in a moment, we're going to be chatting with, again, a couple of more guests on the honorees here at the Leaders and Legends Gala. I'm going to be presenting the award to Marilyn Mosby, so we're looking forward to that. And you heard me make this point. And again, you heard when RC was on. Donald Trump has been trying to cut the budget of this organization. When you talk about how we grow black business, see that's what's amazing. See, on one hand, you can't be out there touting and talking about all of these numbers and talking about how black unemployment has gone down if you're not also touting black folks owning businesses. RC also talked about, the billions Trump has poured into opportunity zones. We also know what we saw in Baltimore, where Under Armour was getting some of those resources. We know doggone well they're not a struggling business, and so they weren't even qualified. They weren't even located in that, but Governor Larry Hogan's office made sure they got it. When you talk about how we've been able to grow as a black community in terms of our businesses, again, let me say it again, on the federal level, it is because we've been able to utilize more fairness on the federal level when it comes to accessing these contracts, when it comes to being able to grow our businesses. There are individuals in this room who've been able to grow their businesses doing 20 and 30 and 50, $100 million when you talk about the size of those businesses. That means employing African Americans as well. And so we cannot act as if this is not a big deal. It is a big deal. It is extremely important because we have to make sure that corporate America is doing right by us when it comes to our dollars. There are folks out there who want us to spend our dollars with them, but do they want to reciprocate to ensure that black businesses are being able to get those contracts? That's why we must continue to do what we do. That's why we must continue to press this issue and not allow Donald Trump and his administration to slash the budget. In fact, we should be increasing the budget here. But let me also say this when we talk about where we are. I keep telling you about 2043 and where we're going in this country when it comes to this nation becoming a nation majority people of color. What we do not want to see is a nation like South Africa where white folks are 9% of the population yet can own 72% of the land, that control the mines, that control the resources, that control the dollars. That is the issue. And the thing that's also important for us as African Americans that we have to confront and deal with. And look, I totally understand, and let me say it again, I totally understand when we as African Americans put our attention on police brutality, put our attention on civil rights, put our attention on social justice. But what cannot happen is when we are so focused on police brutality and social justice that we leave out the economic piece. We must have our economic leaders leading us when it comes to the economy. I've said this to Ron Busby, the U.S. Black Chamber, Inc. I said it to other business leaders, other chambers of commerce across this country, that we cannot be in a situation where we're having an economic conversation and we have civil rights leaders leading the economic conversation. No, the people who should be leading the economic conversation in black America are black people who own businesses, black people who actually have P&L's responsibility. That's who must be doing that. We've got to have not just even more black-owned businesses, we've got to have black-owned businesses with scale. You've heard me talk about this here. 10 years ago, actually 8 years ago, we had 1.9 million black-owned businesses in the United States. 1.8 million of those black-owned businesses only had one employee. Here we stand today, and we have 2.6 million black-owned businesses, yet 2.5 million of them have just one employee. That means that we have increased black-owned businesses by 700,000. 700,000, but here's the deal. When we had 1.9 million black-owned businesses, they were doing an average annual revenue of about $110,000. Those black-owned businesses today are doing an average revenue of $54,000. So they're really only surviving by themselves. So here we have 700,000 more black-owned businesses, yet we're doing half of the revenue. What has Donald Trump also done to hurt black-owned businesses? What they did is they went back to actually creating the larger contracts, the large blocks of contracts, meaning if you were a smaller black-owned business, you couldn't compete for those contracts. Under the Obama administration, they were able to break those up. That was something that Maynard Jackson understood. Maynard Jackson did the exact same thing, breaking up the size of those contracts because he understood that black businesses were not able to compete for those contracts. We will not be able to move forward in the future of this country if we are continually locked out of the economic success of this country. That's why we've got to ensure to put pressure on our political leaders, to support members of the Congressional Black Caucus who stand with the National Minority Supplier Development Council to make sure that we are at the table and we're getting our fair share. It's one thing to yell, we need access. It's another thing to actually be able to get it. And so what I implore all of us to do is that when we're having these conversations, we are talking about ensuring that black-owned businesses are being able to grow and thrive. Again, that's what Maynard Jackson did. That's what Coleman Young did in Detroit. That's what Marion Barry did in Washington, D.C. Yes, times were different. Yes, you had the initial area of affirmative action, but the only way we're going to be able to grow and prosper is if we ensure that we are growing our businesses. And let me say the last thing, which is critically important, and that is black-owned businesses have also got to understand mergers and acquisitions. We cannot be living in our silos so focused on just having our own individual companies that we don't understand how we must also partner together and work together and collaborate to be able to grow and thrive. I've said this in media. There are too many black-owned businesses in media that are operating in their own sort of scale out there who are not out there working with others. We can't live in silos. We must be able to collaborate to grow and build. Folks, it is one thing to say we need more black-owned businesses. What we really need is black-owned businesses with scale. What is the point of continuing to having black-owned businesses doing $54,000 and $55,000 and $60,000 a year when they can't hire anybody? No, what we need are black-owned businesses that are doing $5 million and $7 million and $10 million and $50 million and $100 million and $250 million and $500,000 and $1 billion. That's what we actually need. Some people, and I'm just going to end this way because I need you to understand this here. There were people who told me, why, man, when TV One canceled my show, man, you should go to MSNBC. You should go to CNN. Let me help y'all out. I told y'all that there are 2.6 million black-owned businesses in America, and 2.5 million of them only have one employee. I have 12 employees. Let me repeat that. 12 employees. I told you that the average black-owned business right now does $54,000 in revenue. Last year, we did $700,000 in revenue. Now, do we need more? Of course we do. But see, if you don't start somewhere and actually build it and grow it, it will not be able to grow and thrive. I am employing black people with this show. In fact, there are more, I guarantee you, there are more black people who work on my show than work on any show on broadcast or cable. I would be shocked if you, in terms of the number of people, in terms of the percentage. I guarantee you that. What does that mean? Because when you create small businesses, 65% of America's small businesses are small business. They actually hire people in their communities where they actually are. We have been frozen out of the process for far too long. That cannot continue in the future. We must be about the business of business, which means we must demand our fair share. I'm not interested in crumbs. I'm interested in slices or the whole damn pie. Folks, we appreciate all of you watching. Unfortunately, two of our guests have not arrived yet, but we got to go ahead and shut this thing down. Let me also thank Conscious Thought for contributing to the show today. Don't forget, folks, all of you are watching on YouTube right now. It's nearly 2,000 of you. You can contribute to Roland Martin Unfiltered by giving right there on YouTube, or you can actually go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Join our Bring the Funk fan club, and that is every dollar you give goes to support this show. Tomorrow I'm going to be broadcasting back in the studio, but folks, we're going to be on the road in the next 3 weeks, broadcasting from Denver, from Atlanta, from all over the country, because we are about telling our story, controlling our narrative. And so please, we need your support. You can pay via Cash App, you can pay via PayPal, or even Square. Every dollar you give goes to support this show, goes to support and grow a black business, goes to actually us being able to hire more people and more African Americans to make this show possible. That's why we did it, because we don't just talk about black empowerment, we actually do it. All right, folks, from MGM National here in MGM Grand in National Harbor, I'm Roland Martin. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Y'all have an absolutely great day. Holla! You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.
Hey everybody, this is your man Fred Hammond, and you're watching Roland Martin, my man, Unfiltered.
Hi, this is Essence Atkins, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey yo, Peace World, what's going on? It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, my name is Brescia Webb, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Ow. Well, I like a nice filter usually, but we can be unfiltered.
What's going on? This is Tobias Trevelyan, and if you're ready, you are listening to and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
What's up? I'm Lance Gross, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, this is Cheryl Lee Ralph, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, could it be any other way? Really? It's Roland Martin.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? The blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play.
Unfiltered.